Warning, this podcast contains themes of extreme violence and murder. Subject matter may be offensive to some listeners. Discretion advised.
Welcome to another episode of Evil Transgression, your homicide headquarters here in podcasting. I'm Josh, and with me as always, Dustin and Rex.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hello.
1 full year we have been doing this.
We have.
Time flies.
It's like our birthday.
It is our birthday.
It is our birthday.
It's Evil Transgression's birthday today.
Yep.
And no one made us a cake.
Nobody.
I'll tell Stacy too.
I like ice cream cakes.
Do you?
It's not real cake.
It's not, but it's good.
It's not real cake.
Well, chili's not soup.
It is. I was just about to say that, and yes, it is.
Classic.
Yeah, 1 year we've been doing this.
It's been fun.
It has.
We've reached out to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From where we started to where we are now is a huge difference.
Well, and our current setup still isn't the final setup, you know. But just to think of how we originally recorded and then would get the episode together versus now. Definitely different.
Remember our first episode we all recorded together in my basement?
Yes.
On the couch?
Yes. Yeah. That took 3 hours. Yes.
With microphones setting on top of Barbie cars. Yeah.
Oh, man.
We've come a long way.
We have.
And the evil mob has been with us. Had a lot of support from a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we probably would have stopped doing this a long time ago without the support we've gotten. So
True.
We would have.
there's been some rough moments. We battled through it, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a blast. So,
It has.
So happy birthday to the evil mob as well.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
So I have a question. Have you guys ever been lost? Like just not knowing where you're going? I mean, it's
in a
tough.
car?
Yeah. Or, you know, anywhere. Just like say you're out wandering the woods. I don't know. But I mean, it's tough to do it now because everybody pretty much carries around a GPS.
Right.
So, you know, if you got a phone or some of these cars even have GPSs on them, it's tough to get lost now, but
Yeah.
have you guys ever been lost?
You know, if you're in a car and you just keep making left-hand turns, eventually you'll become lost.
I'd say
I would love to see you try that out.
I mean, I can think of the one when my dad was living in South Carolina. It was my first time going down there. All you had at that time was MapQuest. And
Print it out on papers?
yeah, printed out on paper. And here, man, you're talking, it was probably midnight. And I'm going through this town, and it kept saying, look for the bypass. Well, I'm thinking Columbus 270 type bypass. And no, it was just like a little 2-lane road that they call a bypass down there. That took an extra 2 hours until I found that.
Yeah. So, I mean, chances are you've been lost before.
Yeah.
We've all been lost. So, yeah, I'm going to be honest. And the ladies that are listening to our show right now, I'll be the first one to tell you, we don't always know where we're going.
No.
We may tell you we do. We may. But there's times we don't know where we're going.
Nope.
Which our main character, Alferd Packer, today is known for.
Oh, okay.
Not only is he terrible with directions and finding his way, he's a liar and possibly a killer.
Can't wait to hear this.
This guy sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I say we get into it.
Let's do it.
Buckle up, evil mob, as we discuss Alferd Griner Packer. Alferd Griner Packer was born on January 21st, 1842 in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania.
Did they have horse carriages back then?
Did they have cars then?
We are back in time. No cars.
Okay.
He was one of 3 children born to James Packer and his wife, Esther Greiner. The family moved to LaGrange County, Indiana in the early 1850s so Father James could find work as a cabinet maker. But Alferd had a tumultuous relationship with his mother and father and eventually left home and went to Minnesota as a teenager. Alferd Packer found work himself as a shoemaker. And no, he wasn't making Nikes, Dustin. Alferd enlisted in the Union Army on April 22, 1862, to fight in the American Civil War. His stint didn't last long as he was honorably discharged 8 months later for epilepsy. But that wouldn't keep Packer away from serving for long, as he would enlist again in Iowa for the 8th Iowa Cavalry Regiment. Epilepsy would continue to affect Alferd Packer, and he would suffer from seizures nearly every 2 days.
Oh, that's terrible.
He would serve just shy of 10 months before being discharged again for epilepsy. So, I mean, he really wants to serve, evidently, in the Army.
Sounds like
It's
it.
crazy how he joins in one place and then goes somewhere else and joins. It's not all together.
Well, they don't have computers, so...
So there ain't like a database that's all stored in?
No. They didn't pick up the phone and call down there and say, hey, listen up here. So for the next 9 years, Alferd Packer worked several different jobs, such as a ranch hand, hunter, wagon teamster, but none lasted too long because he continued to suffer from those same seizures. He also worked as a guide during this time, but was known to lose his way quite often. So, not the best characteristic to being a guide.
No.
Not at all.
Many disliked Alferd Packer as he was known to be a thief, a liar, and a very difficult person to get along with. Also, 3 things that you do not want to have as characteristic traits.
No.
Packer eventually settled in Utah in the 1870s. In November of 1873, news of a massive strike of gold in Breckenridge, Colorado made its rounds. A group of 20 miners organized by a man named Bob McGrew banded together to make the trek to Colorado to strike it rich. The group started out with the high hopes of finding gold soon. About 25 miles into their journey, they encountered a man who claimed to be not only a gold prospector, but also a guide. The man's name? Alferd Packer.
Nice.
Although the group was hesitant to trust a prospect and a guide who didn't have any money or any supplies, they gave Packer a chance. When he had told them that he knew the way to San Juan Mountains and knew the San Juan territory very well. No one in the group knew much about the San Juan territory, so they trusted Alferd Packer. What they didn't know is he didn't know much about the territory either. With Alferd Packer in the lead, the group didn't make it too far along before winter creeped up on them. The weather made traveling very difficult and slowed down an already insufferable journey even more. The snow made following the trail impossible, so the group had to rely on the skills of Alferd Packer's compass reading skills.
Imagine being in the snow back then, going like traveling in the winter. That'd be awful. I get out and get my shoes a little bit wet. I'm like, Sonic, dang it.
No, I'm wet.
It hurts.
Well, they're relying on Alferd Packer's compass reading skills now. So,
Which are probably terrible.
well, the problem was Packer didn't possess those skills, and his lack of experience is starting to show. So this group of men are basically wandering around lost in a cold winter oasis. Food became scarce, and the men began surviving on horse feed to stay alive.
Ew.
The next step was for them to eat the horses if things didn't change soon.
We ain't gonna get very far if you get rid of your horses.
But luck would finally find Alferd Packer, and the group would stumble upon a Native American tribe's homestead on January 21st, 1874. The chief of the tribe, Chief Ore, welcomed the men in and took care of them. He offered them food and shelter from the winter. So, I mean, he's being a nice dude.
Right.
Chief Ore told the group they could stay with the tribe until the winter had passed and spring had come along. That way it would be easier for them to find their trail. They're not out there freezing to death and not having anything to eat.
Right.
Word that several groups of miners were already arriving in Breckenridge made a few of the men in the group too anxious to wait until spring. They feared they were going to miss out on their opportunity to become rich. 11 of the 20 men decided to move on and leave the camp. The other 9 men would stay behind with the horses and wagons until spring came along. Chief Ore supplied the group of men with food for their journey, although he begged them to stay until winter had passed. Personally, I would listen to somebody that knows nature a lot more than me.
Right.
But
ain't it crazy to think, like, no, don't just stay, like, the night. You go ahead and stay until winter's gone.
yeah, I mean, he's being an excellent host.
Right.
And they're like, we're going to miss out on our gold. Probably should have listened.
Yep.
Chief Ore told the men to stay along the Gunnison River and it would help lead them to where they were headed. So after a few short weeks, the group of now 11 men left the encampment and headed on their way. They stayed along the river for a while until Packer swore he knew a faster way, which they should know by now. He's a liar, not very good with finding his way out of a wet paper bag. Well, 5 of the men stayed along the riverbank like Chief Ore had told them, but Packer convinced 5 other men to follow him. The 5 men who stayed following the Gunnison River eventually ran out of food and were close to starvation when they were found by cowhands with the government cattle camp near Gunnison, Colorado. They were led back to camp where they were given food and shelter and would stay there until spring. They were the lucky ones. Packer's group, consisting of Shannon Wilson Bell, James Humphrey, Frank Butcher Miller, George California Noon, and Israel Swan, didn't have as good a luck.
Those are some unique names.
I like that. California Noon.
George California Noon. And Frank the Butcher Miller.
Right.
A Packer had moved the group into the mountains to try and make his way towards another Native American camp. This camp was 75 miles away. Now keep in mind, they left the horses and and all that stuff back at the other encampment.
Right.
They went higher into the San Juan Mountains with minimal supplies, no snowshoes, no heavy clothing. They had 2 rifles, a pistol, and a couple of knives and a hatchet. What could go wrong, right?
Oh, yeah.
2 months passed. On April 16th, 1874, one man walked out of the woods towards the Los Pinos Indian Agency. That man was none other than Alferd Packer.
So it took them 2 months to go 75 miles?
Yes. Not they.
Just him?
Just him comes out of the woods. Packer had rags tied to his feet where he once wore moccasins. Carrying a rifle, a knife, a steel coffee pot, and a satchel, there were no men following Packer. The men at the Indian Agency brought Alferd in and gave him food, which he couldn't keep down. He eats this food, throws it up.
Dang.
Maybe he was used to cannibalism.
When the food wouldn't stay down, they gave him whiskey. Yeah, we're going to give you whiskey. Oh, you can't keep food down? Have some of this whiskey. Well, you know, when people drink whiskey, they start to get loose lips. Alferd Packer then starting to tell the men his story. He told them about how he and the men had wandered into the mountains, but he had become snowblind and was slowing the pack down. Packer claimed that when the men grew impatient with him, they abandoned him, and with just the rifle to fend for himself. Alone and in the mountains, Packer told them he had no supplies and had to survive by eating roots and rosebuds to keep from starving. This sent up a red flag to the men because although his clothes were tattered and torn, he had been in the wilderness for 2 months. He didn't look like he had been starving. Packer claimed that he was broke but wanted to make his way back home to Pennsylvania. He sold the rifle to the Justice of Peace at the agency for $10 and made his way to a nearby town to buy supplies for his journey home. However, in town, Packer began throwing around quite a bit of money. He spent several $100s in the saloon where he stayed and was known to have used several different wallets as well. Alferd Packer stayed drunk most of the time in the saloon, where he would tell several different stories of how he became separated from his group. This caused the town to start gossiping. When a member of the original group of 20 showed up in the town, he found Packer in the saloon drunk and chatting it up. The man asked Packer where the rest of the group was, and Packer told him that the others had abandoned him and that they had never returned. The man found this quite odd that the other men would abandon anyone, but let alone their supposed guide.
Yeah.
Especially leaving Packer with one of the only rifles the group had to hunt for food.
Well, that and right in the middle of snow.
Yeah.
Like storm.
Right, yeah.
In the meantime, the other group of 5 men who had taken the route along the river showed up at the Indian agency that Packer had just left. The head of the agency, General Charles Adams, informed the men that a man named Alferd Packer had just come through alone and told them what Packer had said about the other men abandoning him. The group immediately called Packer a liar because they knew the others wouldn't abandon him, and they grew even more adamant about what went on when it was revealed that Packer had left behind some of the other men's possessions, like the rifle and a knife that had belonged to 2 others in the group. General Adams, now suspicious himself, sent an officer to the nearby town in search of Packer to trick him into coming back to the agency. The officer got to town just in time because Packer was about to face some vigilante justice from the guys who were from the original group of 20 men. The one that showed up and was like, hey, where's everybody at?
Uh-huh.
They were getting ready to string him up. So, the officer convinced Packer to come back because they needed his help as a guide to search for the others. And he really doesn't have a choice because if he doesn't, these guys are going to string him up.
Yeah.
Things really fell apart for Alferd Packer and his story when he got back to the agency. General Adams was informed by the officer about all the money he had spent in town. It didn't help that Packer showed up at the agency with a new horse and saddle that he had just purchased.
Wow.
Remember the guy that was broke and had $10 because he sold the rifle?
Uh-huh.
Packer claimed to General Adams that he could explain the money because he had gotten a loan from a man in town. That sounds right.
Oh, yeah.
I just showed up at a town. These people don't know me, but somebody loaned me all this money.
Right.
Got a loan from 4 other men.
Yeah.
5 other men.
5 other men.
Just a little investigation proved that nobody in town had offered Packer a loan, so it was up to the general along with the 5 men from the group to decide what had happened. So the 5 men from the river group and the general have to decide, basically, that's your judge and jury.
Done.
It wasn't long before 2 of the tribesmen came into the agency holding strips of dried human flesh that they had found on a hill near the agency while hunting.
Oh.
Packer passed out and hit the floor. When he came to, he began begging for forgiveness and started telling a news story.
Oh, of course.
Packer told them that after food ran out, the group survived on roots, pine gum, rosebuds, and whatever small wildlife they could hunt. But after a few days, without any luck on any of those things got bad. Packer claimed that he had wandered off, and when he came back, 4 of the men were gathered around Israel Swan's body. Swan had been hit over the head with a hatchet. The group of men were feasting on Swan's body. So Packer figured, what the hell, and joined in. Packer told the general that Israel Swan had several thousands of dollars on him, and the remaining men split it amongst themselves. According to Alferd Packer, this kept the hunger pains away for a few days, but the men became hungry again, and it left them with no choice but to kill the next man, who just happened to be Frank the Butcher Miller. Miller was selected because he was the meatier of the remaining men.
See, it doesn't pay to be fat.
Again, the hatchet did the job, and the remaining men ate yet again. But travel was slow and food was gone, so James Humphrey was the next to go. Shortly after, George California Noon's time came. That left Alferd Packer and Shannon Bell. Packer claimed that he and Bell had swore to God Almighty that they wouldn't kill and eat each other. But hunger does special things to a man, and after a few days, Bell snapped and tried to attack Packer. Packer fought him and eventually struck Bell in the head with the hatchet. Packer was now all alone. He ate what he could of Bell's body before cooking and saving what he could take with him to make it to civilization. Packer admitted that when he finally spotted the Indian agency, he tossed what remained of Bell's body on the mountain, hoping an animal would eat it, so there would be no evidence. Alferd Packer even confessed that he'd grown quite fond of the meat around the breast because it was so tasty.
Oh,
now are they cooking this meat, or are they just?
Oh yeah, he smoked it up. Cooked it over a fire.
Oh.
I guess.
I hope.
I mean, either way, it's human flesh.
That's disgusting, yes.
Yep.
After hearing the story, General Adams decided to send a search party out to find the remains of the men to verify a story that he just couldn't believe himself. Alferd Packer was brought along to show them the way, but continually led the men in areas that to him just didn't look right. Finally, the search party decided to head back to the agency, and on their way back, Alferd Packer tried to kill one of the officers with a knife he had concealed.
Wow.
He was caught in the act and restrained. Packer was jailed by the sheriff from the nearby town of Sagachi. When in custody, Alferd Packer retracted everything he had said and claimed that after a blizzard had come through the area, the men had made a pact that if any of them died of starvation or freezing to death, that they would allow the others to eat their body to keep them from starving.
Just nonstop changing the story.
Yeah, but that's a good pact. Like, hey guys, I'm hungry and it's cold out here, but if one of us die,
eat me.
we're going to donate our bodies to you.
What was that team where that actually happened? The airplane that crashed?
Was it the soccer team?
I think it was soccer.
Well,
there was a movie after it.
Yep.
Well, this is also right after the Donner Party. If you've ever heard of the Donner Party. Donner Party of 5. Where the guys go up in the mountains and get lost and they have to eat each other. But, I mean, this guy doesn't do himself any favors, though, by trying to kill one of the officers to, get away, But, yeah, you're right. He's changing this story yet again. But he's not done. The following August, an illustrator for Harper's Weekly magazine named John Randolph stumbled across the 5 bodies. The men were within hiking distance of a nearby city had they went down the mountain instead of up the mountain, but with Packer leading the way, they went the wrong way. John Randolph sketched the scene as he found it and alerted the authorities in nearby Lake City. First responders to the scene stated that it was clear that extreme violence had befallen the men and the area reeked of death. Frank Miller's head was missing from the site, and all of the bodies had been cut up and filleted open. But the fact that all 5 men were in one spot blew a hole in Packer's story.
Oh, yeah.
Also, the fact that there was still plenty of, I don't know if it sounds right to call it this, but meat on the bodies also proved that they hadn't feasted on one man until he was just bones. A path was worn into the ground from the area where the bodies were to a small shelter that they found out Packer had used. Evidence suggested that the men were killed even before they were out of supplies. So the theory was made that Packer had killed the men with hopes of robbing them and trotting off, but he got snowed in. Made the shelter, traveled back and forth from the shelter to the bodies, cutting off flesh to eat in order to survive long enough to find his way back to civilization.
Now, was he the only one with the gun?
There were, if you remember, there was 2 rifles and a pistol when they went up. But, they split off, and who knows where this went, where that went. But there was, he still had the 1 rifle that he turned in. The bodies were buried at the site, and the search party headed back to confront Alferd Packer. Except when they got there, Packer wasn't in jail anymore. He had basically walked away from the log cabin jail he was staying in.
Wow.
For nearly 9 years, Alferd Packer stayed free, living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, under the alias of John Swartz. He was discovered on March 11th, 1883, by a member of the original mining party. Packer was arrested and put on trial. On April 6, 1883, a trial began in Lake City. Packer pleaded not guilty to the charges, but after just 7 days, he was found guilty of the premeditated murder of Israel Swan and sentenced to death by hanging. During the trial, it was made known by the family of Israel Swan that he had gone on the expedition with around $6,000. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Back then.
Yeah.
And that's why the court believed Alferd Packer was without a doubt inclined to kill him and steal it. Packer's execution was scheduled for May 19th, 1883. It was reported by the local newspaper that the judge sentenced Alferd Packer in this manner. Now keep in mind, This is the newspaper reporting it. So this is like hearsay. Somebody told the newspaper, this is what the judge said when they sentenced him.
Yeah.
And it says this. Stand up, you ferocious man-eating son of a bitch, and receive your sentence. When you came to Hinsdale County, there were 7 Democrats, but you ate 5 of them, goddamn you. I sentenced you to be hanged by the neck until you're dead, as a warning again reducing the Democratic population of this county. Packer, you Republican cannibal, I would sentence you to hell, but the statutes forbid it.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good.
Of course, court records say it differently, but I like the newspaper's account better.
That is good.
The court records are all like, I sentence you to death by hanging for blah, blah, blah.
I feel like that's how he really talked, too.
Probably.
I think that's how it should have been.
Yeah. That's how they all talked weird back then.
But Alferd Packer apparently had some pretty good lawyers because he was spared the death penalty when they found a, quote, savings clause that said he couldn't be tried for murder on a technicality. In October of 1885, the sentence was reversed and Packer would have to go on trial again. On June 8th of 1886, Alferd Packer was convicted of 5 counts of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 40 years in prison, which at the time was the longest custodial sentence in U.S. history.
Bang.
Wow.
40 years for killing 5 men. That's 8 years apiece. After several denied appeals and serving 18 years, Alferd Packer was paroled on February 8th, 1901. Polly Pry, a reporter for the Denver Post, had made quite a buzz on the Packer case, and she used his service in the Army to portray Packer as just an average Joe who served his country and just wound up in a bad predicament, and he did what he had to do in order to survive. That was the basis for Packer's parole. I mean, she basically wrote him out of prison. Shortly after his release, Alferd Packer got a job as a guard at the very same Denver Post before eventually becoming a ranch hand. Alferd Packer died on April 23, 1907, at the age of 65 as a result of a stroke. It is rumored that he had actually become a vegetarian before his death.
That's a big change.
Oh, yeah.
Packer was buried in Littleton, Colorado with full military honors. His grave was later cemented over in 1973 to keep grave robbers and vandals from disturbing his grave.
Huh.
Now, despite their belief that his corpse was actually intact, there's rumors that Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum is in possession of Packer's dissected skull.
Really?
Correct. Which they say they bought for $20,000. Now, no statement was made to how they verified the authenticity of the skull, but that's the rumor.
Nice.
So if the skull does belong to Packer, they believe that his head was removed from his body shortly before or after his burial. And then they dissected his brain to study it, apparently. That's so as of 2008, the skull is reported to be at the Ripley's Museum in San Antonio, Texas.
I'm still shocked that he only did 18 years for killing 5 people.
Well,
yeah.
He was hungry. That's just a completely different time, though. I mean,
Yeah.
and then there's not a whole lot of, you don't have any witnesses or, you know, the forensics is basically
I mean,
like,
you don't really need witnesses. You go up with 6 people, you come back with 1, 5 people are dead.
yeah, it's true. They were also in the wilderness for quite some time. Did they freeze to death? We don't know. But they did find like hatchet marks and stuff in their skulls. But
There you go.
he was hungry.
Poor guy.
So that leaves the real debate of, if the 3 of us got stuck in the mountains, are you going to eat each other?
You're first.
And I know you're going right for the butthole.
He's like, I need some salad.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive. It would be disgusting. Like just unseasoned meat.
Oh,
Gross.
Yeah.
but I hear the breast meat is to die for.
Well, then you're definitely the
So
one we're
tender.
going for. You got the biggest breasts of.
But you're going after this butthole first because we all know you.
Oh God!
Wow.
Beans and weenies. That is the disturbing story of Alferd Packer.
I actually like that.
Yeah.
It was a pretty twisted story.
Yes, it was.
I told you he was a liar.
Oh, yeah.
His story changed quite often.
A little bit.
He's horrible with directions.
Yeah. You can't be a criminal and a drunk. Trying to hide a secret, it's not going to work.
Nope.
You get a little bit of whiskey and you're like, yeah, buddy, I'm going to tell you a different story now. So since it is our, basically our 1 year birthday.
Yep.
1 year anniversary, birthday, whatever you want to call it. Our 1 year day.
It's our birthday.
Yeah. It's our podcast birthday.
Happy birthday.
You know, like I said earlier, we couldn't have done it without the support of the Evil Mob that we have.
Definitely.
But we want to give a special shout out to all of our Patreons.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna name you all one by one.
Oh, rip it off.
By
Are you
one.
ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Tara, Anastasia, LC, Lisa, David, Tammy, Darren, Kiona, Natasha, Edie, Danny, Kayla, Joel, Tiffany, Abrielle, James, Jason, Ashley, Patricia, Helen, Rob, Stacy, and Courtney.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So thank you all so much.
absolutely.
That took a lot out of Dustin to talk that much at once.
Especially when he got to Kiona.
Yeah, struggled a little bit.
I had to look.
Like I was trying to get the vibe from your head of what you were struggling with.
She has it in parentheses. Exactly how to say it.
Really?
So I had to look at that like Kiona.
Nice.
She gave him phonics for it, like tahi, da. Absolutely, man. Thank you to all of our patrons.
Yep.
Thank you to everyone in the Evil Mob that listens to us be idiots every week.
Every week.
Yeah, we couldn't be where we are without you. And to be honest with you, things are getting better.
Yeah.
We're already talking about doing some new things that we'll let you in on here shortly. That makes us a little bit more legit, not the guys in the basement
Right.
talking on microphones on Barbie cars. But
The good old days.
yeah, so I mean, we couldn't do it without the support we have. And here's to better days ahead. And also, we've been talking about it for a while, but I really am going to buckle down and focus on getting us an Evil Mob t-shirt together. Because I know everybody's been talking about that's the one they want.
Uh-huh.
Because they don't want one with our ugly heads on it. Or we are going to get these Evil Mob shirts together. It's a promise. That's my goal in the next couple weeks.
The one with our picture was really a joke, and people actually bought it.
They did. Yeah, it definitely went up as a joke, and I think we sold like a couple the first day. Like, what happened? But yeah,
my mom even bought one. I walk in the house and in their house, and she'll be wearing our shirt. I'm like, "What's up?"
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, what do you got, Rex?
The usual. Go to our Facebook page, give it a like. If you have any comments, questions, ideas, you can email us at eviltransgression@gmail.com.
And you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/eviltransgressionpodcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or go to our links in the descriptions of each episode, and it'll all be there. Everything you need to know is on our link tree.
Yes.
So,
Yep. Takes you right to our link tree where you can do all kinds of cool stuff like buy t-shirts,
boom.
Yep.
coffee mugs,
Boom.
I don't know what else, but there's a ton of stuff.
Boom.
But yeah, check it out. And once again, thank you to every one of you.
With that being said, happy 1 year.
Happy 1 year.
I love you guys.
Oh, love you too.
All right, this is getting weird.
Yep. Now it's time to put our pants back on. So, thanks for listening, Evil Mob. And until next week,
See ya.
See ya.
peace.